Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm doing my Sunday comics. I'm a hour later than I did last week because I slept in. I was at my niece's house yesterday. She had a Christmas, and I stayed up late. It's about a 2.5 hour drive, and I stayed late. I just keep hearing this freaky noise, but I stayed late, and I got home like after midnight, and you can't just go right to bed because I've been in that drive. I was like chugging coffee to stay awake because I was by myself in the car. My wife stayed home because she had an obligation to go to a office work party. She had already told everybody that she was going to go, and I messed up the dates. So I keep hearing a weird noise. It's freaking me out. But anyway, so I slept in. So here I am doing my Sunday comics. I didn't think I was going to do it. This will probably be the last one because what next Sunday is Christmas, and the following is New Year's. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'll do one of them. So here we go. This Sunday comics. Nobody's here. If anybody does show up, let me know if the sound is good. Let me know if the video is good. And just a little bit of babbling before I get into the comic book. Just waiting to see if anybody shows up. Is I'm one of seven kids, and when growing up, we always had a huge Christmas, huge, and we had a big house, and my father would and my mother would cook for everybody, and at one point we were up to like 54 people. And that's like my immediate family. So all my brothers, sisters are married, and their kids. Sometimes an uncle would come over, and then boyfriends and girlfriends, and there was like 54 people. So Christmas and Thanksgiving were huge. And my parents passed away, and COVID happened, and then it's just been every family by themselves. So I always say like the emperor died, and then we broke up into separate kingdoms. So so my brother would have his kids at his house, my other brother would have his kids at my sister, and so on. And it's my wife and I. So it was just not what I'm used to. My wife's from a small family, so she's used to a small holiday, but I kind of miss it. So my niece had a great idea. She she moved out to like the sticks out in Connecticut. Like they get bears in their backyard, kind of back. I always joke that I'm in the country, but she's in the woods. Oh my God, is she in the woods? And it was dark last night when I was looking for my car. But so they one of their rooms is bigger than my entire house. It's gigantic, and I was joking around the house like everywhere you look, there's another room. It's just amazing house. So she put up all these folding tables and had us all over. A week before Christmas. Nobody had any prior obligations. It was brilliant, and everybody showed up. It was so nice. It was like the olden days. It was really good. The kids opening presents, big feast of food. It was so much fun. So that was really good. I really enjoyed that. And as you may or may not know, I'm also a board game freak. I host game nights, and I go to like one of those Magic the Gathering Warhammer stores, and host game nights and play games and teach games to people too. So my nieces and nephews, they they're little. Well, I have the niece that had the party. She's 40 years old. I can't believe it. She told me her age, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I remember when you were singing to me at my birthday party up on the table. I picked her up, put her on the table, and she sang "Skidamarinky Dinky Doo," and now she's 40 years old. Oh God! And anyway, so one of my nephews, little Johnny, hurt my niece's son. He asked me to bring a game, so I brought Colt Express, and I don't know if anybody who will watch this later in the future knows Colt Express, but it's a cool little programming game. So what you do is you put out a train engine, and they're 3D, so it's little cardboard that you assemble, and once you assemble, you can leave it in the box. And then you put like a train car per player. So there was four players, so four train cars. And then you put these little tokens of like money bags and gems. And then each person takes a little wooden person, a little miniature people. So they're called meeples, a little meeple. And you put, and they're all different colors. So once the game is all set up, you I always say it's like writing a Western script. So there's little cards that tell you how many cards to play, and you put 4 of them on the stack, and everybody has a deck of cards. They have the same exact deck of cards, and you shuffle it up, and you can have 7 cards or 6 cards, I forget the exact number, and you play the cards, and each card has an action. Grab money, punch somebody, move up or down, and you play them up like that. Then you flip them over, and then you reveal, and then you do all the action. So you're programming your little cowboy what to do. Now the problem is some of the cards interact. So if I punch you, you stagger into the next car, and that'll mess up all your actions. It's so much fun. And as I was setting it up and I was explaining it, I started to get a little nervous. These guys, they might not get it. It might be over their head. So my little niece Sophia played. Oh man, I forget their ages. Her brother Johnny, the one who asked to play games, and my my brother's other daughter, her oldest son, Robbie, and he never played games with us before. And Robbie is very hyperactive. He's always that kid running around, smashing things, playing with guns, shooting you with darts. So I was a little bit nervous with him playing, but he was excellent. Sat there, played the game, figured out the rules. He was programming his cowboy, and it was working. The only thing that was messing up was you can't tell what other people are gonna do, which is fine. I'm 50 years old, and I that's the only way I mess up too. It was so much fun. And then Robbie asked to play it again. Sat there through the whole thing, picked a different character because each character has different rules and different like special abilities. He picked one that he thought would be better for him, and I was so happy. It made my day. Made my day. It was excellent. And my little niece Sophia, as soon as I got there, she goes, Uncle John, I want to show you my Harry Potter shelf because my wife Eleanor is a Harry Potter fanatic. She loves Harry Potter. She has a home, she has one of the bedrooms in the house is her home work office. She works from home, and it's her goal is to make it look like Dumbledore's office in the movie. She loves Harry Potter. So I went up and took a picture of it, sent it to my wife, and then I asked her if she had the Harry Potter Mina Lena editions, which are like pop-out books. They're so cute. And she said no. So I asked her mom if it would be okay, for a secret. And I went on Amazon, bought the 2 books. She should get them on Tuesday. I don't know. It just made me feel good. Made me feel like the holidays. They had a big Christmas tree. The only thing that was missing was snow. It snowed last week, but it wasn't. And thank God it didn't snow. Oh my God, because it's a hike to the house is like up on a hill, so you got to go up these steps. And I did fall. So it's about what was it, about 10 o'clock at night, which might as well be 4 o'clock in the morning out there. And I was walking down the steps, and I'm just saying to myself, man, it is pitch dark. And then boom. Hey John, I was at the Big Apple Con yesterday with my wife. Oh, I missed it. I didn't know there was a Big Apple Con. How was it? And thank you for coming. Thank you for commenting. How did your wife like it? Where was it? It's at the Penn Hotel, right? The Big Apple Con. And let me know. Do I sound good? Do I look good? Well, the video look good. And here I go. I'm going to take my first sip of coffee. I just had to let it cool down. Hope everybody else is warm. Has a cup of coffee with me for some Sunday comics. I was just rambling about Christmas. It was really nice. Put me in a good mood. And my wife, she went to her office party. She has this couple that they adopted a baby, and the baby's so cute. The baby's so cute. So I'm happy I saw my family. I'm sad that I missed their baby. I love that they're such a neat couple. Good morning. It's weird. I enjoy you reminiscing about old comics. Then I would. Um, I'm. I missed your name. I'm sorry because I was reading your comment. But I agree with you, and I do not think it's weird. And I think you are experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing, if I may be so bold as to explain your feelings. But I get excited when I hear other people talk about things that get them excited. I had a friend, Chris. I haven't seen him in years, and he's a Philadelphia Flyers fan. I'm not a sports fan. Like, I'm the stereotypical comic book nerd. I don't know anything about sports, although I did play football in high school. I know football and I know baseball. New York. Oh, New Yorker hotel. Wife liked it. I was able to network a little and give out a few. I'm like, oh, you make comics? What comics do you make? If Could you email me at John's Long Box about your comic? I'll pick one up. I'm always on the lookout for new indie comics. John's Long Box at yahoo.com. Send me the information, please. The New Yorker Hotel. And that was my very first comic convention when my friend Mike took me to the New Yorker for the Big Apple Con. I called him up. I text messaged him, and he's notoriously bad about not getting back. Because for his birthday, he took me. Uh, for, yeah. Oh yes. So as I was saying, let me finish my thought. I'm just woke up and I didn't even get my. I had one sip of coffee. Which, speaking of which, I'll take another one. So he's a Philadelphia Flyers fan, and we went to go see the Islanders versus the Flyers, and he's one of those guys that puts the makeup on the face. And it's funny because he grew up in Long Island. He just likes the Philadelphia, and I was so excited. It was funny because we were the only two people there rooting for the away team. But he talks about, and I get so excited because he's excited. I could care less about hockey, about the Philadelphia Flyers. And then funny, my friend John, his wife Debbie, they sometimes watch. Hi John, hi Debbie. They she is a Rangers fan, and I like going to their house during the Ranger games. She gets so excited, and I could care less. Now, I realized that I got into other people's excitement when I was watching Conan O'Brien, somebody I cannot stand. I forget why I was even watching it. And Tom Hanks was on, somebody I'm indifferent to. And it was just a run of the mill interview. Like these late night talk shows, I realized they're just commercials. They're just commercials of it's a sci-fi strange aliens. Okay, what's the name of your comic? No, or what's the name of your comic? But that sounds good. That sounds good. I'll check it out. Uh, so Tom Hanks, the interview is run of the mill. Who cares? And then Conan asked him about typewriters. He's like, "Oh, I heard you collect typewriters." And Tom Hanks, he looked like a deer caught in the headlights. And then Tom Hanks just pontificated for the next 10, 15 minutes about going to going to garage sales, buying old typewriters, fixing them up, and putting them in on display. And it was so exciting. I know nothing about old typewriters, and I could have watched that interview for an hour. Um, and then what I talked about a few times how I moved away in 1993 across the country. Well, I came back in 2000, and I was going to my parents' house. I was walking down the street, and I passed my neighbor, and she was like, "Oh my God, John!" I was friends with her son. We were the same age, and he's at this point he was, had his own place to live. He moved out. He had his own job, so she invited me in for lunch. And her husband was this quiet, nice gentleman. And he just sat there and nodded, and she controlled the conversation and was asking questions. I felt like I was on a job interview. And then I noticed that they had this little glass, looked like a little glass bell jar about as big as a coffee mug. And I asked about it, and he lit up. McKinley Alpha, a Yahoo email. With such generous, is that bad? It's funny because you're like the third person in a week to laugh at me about a Yahoo email. I don't know. It worked. You want to hear something funny? I created an email in 1993. I only lost it. I only got rid of it in 2014. So I had it from 93 to 2004. Same email, pretty much the same password. I just, because that website went, it was Juno. You want to laugh? So there you go. It was a Juno website. And then ever since then, I had a Yahoo website from 2014. So I was asked him about turns out he said they were insulators. Like if you go up on a telephone pole, there were like these ceramic insulators that the wires would wrap around so that they wouldn't rest on any metal, so there would be no stack on a telephone line. And he goes, they don't use them anymore. And he collects them. He was an old telephone guy. My father was a telephone man too, but he was like a lineman. So he was talking about how the green ones were made here, the red ones were made here. They only made the blue ones for these certain, and it was fascinating. I didn't even know these things existed. And here I am. He had them all on the fireplace on display, and he was talking about them and I went on eBay, and it turns out like people buy and sell these things. There's comic book collectors, there's Hot Wheels collectors, Magic the Gathering. My niece's boyfriend's into Magic the Gathering. We were talking about that yesterday. And then this guy collects insulators from telephone poles. He says that they would go upstate and they would they would just go upstate hunting or upstate fishing or camping, and they would find old telephone poles that are just no longer have wire, and they would climb up the poles and unscrew these insulators. Fascinating. So yes, so I could see whoever I forget who made that comment, the exact name, but I could see how you could get excited about listening to me pontificate about comics when I have the same thing about stuff that I'm not even interested in. Like, I had one of my coworkers was a World War II fanatic, and he would, as we were working, he would just talk facts about World War II. And I have a history degree and I love history, but I have an ancient history degree. I know as much, maybe a little bit more about World War II than the next guy, because I like to read, and let's face it, Captain America is always fighting the Nazis, right? World War II was the war with Baron Zemo, right? Baron Zemo, the real villain. He started World War II, and then Baron Stroker started Hydra. That was World War II. So I know a lot about World War II because I read comic books. Okay, so there you go. There's me rambling. Right, but this comic, this is one of my very first Fantastic Four comics, and I got this out of order because I got this at a 7-Eleven as a kid. I remember I got it as a 7-Eleven. And here's a funny thing. I keep talking about this, but RJ from the Fourth Age had me on his channel, and we did like an hour-long conversation. Unfortunately, only one-third of that conversation survived. Uh, One, he forgot to hit record, and another one, there was internet interference, so it was all choppy and staticky, and it wasn't he has like a satellite internet, so he's very dependent upon the weather. Excuse me. So this part got missed. He said something, and I totally agree with. He said that when he will look at like an old comic book, and it will take him back to what was going on in the world and in his life at that time. And I said, absolutely, 100%. So I remember this was 1977. I remember going to the 7-Eleven, and I bought, I think it was 186 first. So Fantastic Four 186 was my first comic book that I bought with my own money. Again, I've had comic books before that were given to me, or maybe my brother bought, and it was just in my house. But the very first comic book that I bought, that was like, this is the beginning of my comic book collecting, was Fantastic Four 186. But I bought this one afterwards because it was at a newsstand. So sometimes you'd find comic books out of order, and at this point, I didn't know what these numbers meant. Okay, it was like this number 185 might as well have been the same thing as 02462, which I still don't really know what that means. So, I just bought comic books, and you could figure out that this one went before that one because what 186 was right after, and they were referencing the stuff that happened in this particular issue. So it was just fun to get the comics, read them, find another one. I'm like, oh, this one's before this one's before that one. And I told you, my friend Sean explained to me what these numbers meant and how you had to get them in consecutive order, and then he said, I love this era because of the way they shaded Ben's rocks in the orange and black. Always loved Johnny when he was drawn with the little flicks. Yeah, yeah. This is the Jack Kirby way of drawing both of them, and this is George Perez drawing, and this is Joe Sinnott inking. So Joe Sinnott was Captain. Oh, it's Captain America. Joe Sinnott was Captain America. Joe Sinnott was Jack Kirby's inker, long-time collaborator. And Jack Kirby and Joe Sinnott created Captain America. So that just shows you how long they've been a team. And it's funny because in my mind, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee were always the same age, but Jack Kirby was a lot older than Stan Lee. Jack Kirby, started in comics before Stan, and Joe Sinnott was contemporaries with Jack Kirby, and they were long. I think they were partners longer than anybody. So this is George Perez at the beginning of his career, and I think he was aping a little bit of Jack Kirby's style. I mean, why wouldn't you? And he had Jack Kirby's inker, Joe Sinnott, working with him. So yeah, he drew the Torch the way Jack would draw him in George's own style. He drew the Thing the way Jack would draw him in George's own style. But then with Jack's inkers. So look at this. This is just like, I don't know, like the threshold of the olden days and the new days. I love this. And I stepped into the Fantastic Four right here. So of course, everybody remembers their first car. Everybody remembers their first girlfriend. I remember my first Fantastic Four artists and storytellers. So yeah, this is my era. What you know, this is it. This is it. As I drink more coffee, and I love this. And there's Agatha Harkness. That's what she looks like in the comics. And at the movie, there was Rosemary's Baby and The Omen and The Exorcist and Ride with the Devil. So witchcraft and Satanism was all the rage back then. So Fantastic Four, Agatha Harkness became like a bigger character, and they're fighting the witches, and you know, this around this point in the X-Men, what's his name, Nightcrawler's girlfriend Amanda Stefton turned out to be a witch. And there was all this witchy stuff. Just pop culture gets into the comic books, and then later on, it's like an Ouroboros. One influences this, and this influences that. When I was a kid, I had no conception of how Reed and Sue were May December Roman. Yeah, that was a big thing in comic books. That Reed was the professor, and Sue was the I think she was one of his students. And we just bought it. No big deal. It was innocent little kid. Now you're like, and it's same with Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, and same with James. What's his name? James Mc, but Vindicator and Alpha Flight. She she was Heather Hudson, who later also became Guardian Vindicator. And what was his name? James McDougal, because they always called him Mac or McDonald. Yeah, James McDonald. She was a teenage babysitter, and they got so there. That was a big thing in comic books. But at the time, Jimmy Page had a 14-year-old girlfriend. David Bowie had a 14-year-old girlfriend. Steve Tyler had a 14-year-old girl. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying things were different back then, and no, people didn't really that. Woody Allen, Woody Allen, he had that movie Manhattan, which was about him in his 50s dating Mariel Hemingway, who was supposed to be like 14, 15, and everybody just accepted it, and it was like an Oscar award-winning movie. You know, there was a lot of this. Things were different. 30, oh geez, a million years ago, million years ago. I don't want to date myself because I was 8 years old at this point. There was a whole bunch of that stuff going on, and we just accepted it, because the latest one in comic book times that I could think of was James McDonald and Heather Hudson in Alpha Flight, because that was the late '80s, and but before that, yeah, totally different era, excuse me. But the rest of the stuff came out in the '60s, and I'm trying to think. There was another big deal that I was going to bring up, but my old man mind, it just escaped my mind. But yeah, different era. Holy mackerel, you're right. You know, I'm trying to think. It was that a big thing in DC? I I don't know. But let's take a look. Let's open this up now. Look how beat up this is. For reminiscing again, I talked a few times about I had a folder that I would bring comic books, and I would just stuff them in this folder. This, no bags, no boards, totally unprotected, raw comic books. Jerry Lee Lewis, yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say Elvis Presley and Priscilla. Priscilla was 14. Jerry Lee Lewis, not only did he marry a 14-year-old, but she was his cousin, and you know, uh, Ted Nugent married his babysitter. Uh, you know, uh, and- Kiss. I love Kiss. I love the band Kiss. Sue me. I love the band Kiss. First six albums of Kiss are classic rock and roll albums. There's a song, Christine 16. What was Ace Frehley, 35 years old, when he's singing about, when I pulled up to school that day, I knew that I had to have you. I had to have you. You know, it's and we laughed about it. Oh, those cheeky fellas. There's a totally different, creepy, creepy era. I'm trying to make my coffee one handed. So as I was saying about this, at this point, I had a folder that I would just jam comic books in. Smash the like button. Yes, please do. I'm trying to, I'm still new at all this stuff. Even though I've been doing this for 2 years, I don't really know what I'm doing. I assume that smashing the like button helps me out. So yes, smash the like button, everybody. Thank you. Um, I'm trying to pour coffee without spilling everything all over myself. All right, so hope you're having coffee too. Well, we'll have coffee. It's supposed to be like a nice little conversation, having coffee, talking about comics. So I had this folder, and I still remember the folder. It had Fantastic Four 159 was the cover of the folder, and that was my comic book folder. And this was in there, so you could see how beat up this is. Is it transferring how beat up this is? So I'm gonna have to pick up another copy just for my collection, and this will be my reading copy. But look at the explosion. Things punching this guy, and it freaking explodes. The little Kirby crackle. So this is definitely George Perez aping Jack Kirby. So let's look at the ad over here. Fun tricks, free things mailed today. What is this one? A magic brain calculator. Sneezing powder. I would kill you if you gave me sneezing powder. Everlight candles. Oh, so you can't blow them out? That's pretty cool. A money maker. There you go. Let's print money. Exploding pen. There's the guy at work who carries a pen that when you hit the button, you get an electric shock. He thinks it's the funniest thing. He's been carrying that pen I'm not even joking, for 7 or 8 years. And every time anybody asks for a pen, his face lights up and he hands you the pen. Stink loads. My nephew did a stink load. My little baby nephew did a stink load yesterday. Walker-matic. Careful, magic tricks. Monsters. I don't know where I got it from, but I had I didn't order it from the comics. I think my brother might have, but I had a gigantic glow-in-the-dark Frankenstein on the back of my door when I was a kid. As much as I'm into comic books, my older brother's into horror movies and everything. My oldest brother was into going to work. The guy had a super strong work ethic. All right, so a brilliant scientist, his best friend, underage teenage little girl, her fiery tempered kid brother. You know what? Now you put this thought into my head, and I can't stop thinking about it. Why did the Human Torch come with them? Why did Sue go with them? I could see Reed going up with the spaceship. He designed it. Ben was the pilot. Why did Johnny Storm and Sue go? Why? When they make this movie, they're gonna have to really, I got no problems with movies when they take a Marvel movie and they fix what needs to be fixed. And I hate, we're gonna update this for a modern audience. That just means it's gonna be a crap movie. But sometimes things do need to be fixed. And why Sue and Johnny has to be were on the ship has to be explained a little bit better. And I got no problems if they do fix that. And of course, it can't be a race to the moon unless it's set in the 60s. And I'm praying that the Fantastic Four movie is set in the 60s. And then remember, there's time travel involved. Kang is going to be the next baddie, so they can time travel. Wouldn't that be so cool? Like get the directors and the set designers from Mad Men to work on the new Fantastic Four movie. That would be awesome. That would be so good. Hell, I wouldn't even object to what's the guy's name? John Hamm playing Reed Richards. I wouldn't object to that. just a little bit of tongue in cheek, a little bit of played for serious. I would love that so much. So where were we? Together the unknown terrors of outer space. They were changed by cosmic rays into something more than merely human. Mr. Fantastic, the Thing, the Invisible Girl, the Human Torch. They are the Fantastic Four, and the world will never be the same again. I love that. So let's look at the credits. Len Wein, writer and editor. I always think it's a mistake when the writer or the penciler is the editor. Look. I don't know if you guys saw my community post about Prophet. Len Wein was the editor. I'm Len Wein. Just close the book and go home now. Rob Liefeld was the writer, the layouts, and the editor, and it shows. There was typos. The comic made no sense. The storytelling was terrible. The art was terrible. You cannot be your own editor. If the gentleman who just told me about his own comic book, did you hire somebody else to edit your comic? Did you at least have a friend to edit your own comic? I'm just curious now. I'm not lambasting you, or I'm not, whatever. I'm just curious what your process was, because I'm writing a few comic book scripts right now, and I have a friend. She's a PhD. She's a psychologist, and she reads all my scripts. And I gotta say, man, it hurts. It hurts when she tells me like potholes and typos, stuff like that. I'm grateful for that she catches. But when she's like, this doesn't make sense, because she doesn't read comic books. She's not a comic book person. She's a very technical minded, very realistic person. So I appreciate her. I have to explain things to her. And some things I'll stand my ground and be like, no, well, if comic book people will get this. But sometimes I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And it hurts. I can't help but get mad at her, but that's what I'm glad she does it. But anyway, so Len Wein. Who is Len Wein? He's a comic book. He's a comic book writer. His wife is Glennis Wein, who's a famous colorist for Marvel and DC. And Len Wein created the new X-Men. I think he created Swamp Thing, and I think he created I can drive me nuts. It's escaping me. But he worked for both Marvel and DC. Very prolific at this point. George Perez. What can I say about George Perez that I haven't said 9,000 times already? Him and John Byrne are my two favorite comic book artists. Why? Because these are the guys whose stars were rising when I started collecting comics. I watched them get better and better and better. I love both of them. And Joe Sinnott, one of my favorite inkers. Joe Sinnott is comic book inker. He is the standard that all comic book inkers will be measured by. He's the George Harrison of inkers. And George Harrison to me is the standard of all rock and roll guitarists. He's not the flashiest. He's not the most famous. He's not like Prince out there just tearing it up, or Jimi Hendrix. But George Harrison is. If you're not as good as George Harrison, you're not a good rock guitarist. If you're better than George Harrison, good for you. It doesn't take away from George Harrison. So that's how I feel about Joe Sinnott. He is the standard by which all other inkers shall be measured. And then Glynis Wein, colorist. And Gaspar letterer. I seen that name a few times before, and I don't really know much about it other than my grandfather's brother's name was Gaspar, and he was a painter. I just thought of a funny story about Gaspar, and since I got more time, I'll tell it. But we go to visit him, and he had this big house upstate. Once you get out of like the Five Boroughs area or the Long Island area of New York, which is where I live and grew up, you could go upstate, and the houses are gigantic. They're like Little House on the Prairie. And he lived there by himself, and he had this gigantic house. And the whole upstairs, the whole attic was filled with paintings. He was a painter. And my Uncle Frank was a painter. We're talking fine painting. And so I guess there's some art in the family. It skipped me though, and they would paint. And invariably, when you paint, there's topless chicks luxuriating, in as his subjects. And I'd be like, Uncle Gaspar, this girl's got no clothes on. And he would be like, yeah, Johnny, when I was painting, I ran out of paint, so I couldn't paint her shirt. I got to go buy more paint so I could finish painting her clothes. I was like, oh, okay. A dirty old man getting chicks up there to paint. And he was an old man, so good for him. All right, so here we have our splash page. Oh, let's look at the indicia before we go any further. I always like to look at this. For those of you who may not know, the indicia is where you put all the legal stuff. It's very important. So this is volume 1, issue 186, August 1977. The indicia is where, like, if there was a problem with like copyright and somebody wanted to sue or whatever, you want to establish who did this first, this is where you go. Doesn't matter what's in the comic book. This is the legality. So this'll sets the trademark, sets the copyright, sets the date. And it also talks about the subscription rates. That was a big deal back then because this was before the comic book market. This was before the comic book stores, rather. So these were mailed to the 7-Elevens. They were mailed to the the candy stores, the stationery stores, and that would set the price. That was a big deal. If they were too expensive, the stores wouldn't order them. So they would, this would establish that they qualified for what is it, media mail? And in order to qualify for media mail, this is old lore, you had to have at least 2 pages of text without any ads, without any drawings or pictures. then you would qualify as a magazine. So at first, if you read like real early, like 12-cent comics or maybe even 15 and sometimes 20-cent comics, they would have a crummy, fast, hokey written story, you know, two pages. And that would qualify it for media mail because it would be 2 pages of text. Later on, somebody got the bright idea of just publishing letters. So there would be a letters page. And that it was a utilitarian purpose. It was easy. They were already written. And they just perused to make sure there was no dirty words, fixed the typos, threw them in the back, and voila, you now qualify for media mail. And I thought it was brilliant because it qualified it for media mail, and it also built like a sense of community. Let me know, guys. Anybody who watches this, post in the comments. Do you read the letters when you read old comics? Do you read the letters when you read new comics? If I like the comic series, I read the letters. I really liked reading and that's just another. Here I am. I'm going to go off on my anti CGC rant again. But you know, when you CGC, when you for those of you who don't know, you send your comics out to this company. They grade the comics. They give you like a number from one to or point one to 10.0. And they put it in a plastic slab, never to be seen again, never to be read again, never to be opened again. So you can't look at the letters page, you can't look at the ads, you can't look at this again. It's just a cover of a comic book. That's not a comic book. That's a plastic trading card. That's the oversized trading card. That's all it is. But anyway, do you read the letters pages? For these Fantastic Four comics, the Avengers, I always read the letters pages. I like to see what they're talking about. But I just read Prophet 1 to 8, and I did a community post where I talked about Prophet because I didn't want to showcase it because I didn't like it. But I didn't read the letters because I don't care. I'm not invested in that comic book to read 3 pages of letters. Yeah, somebody says yes. Noir said he reads the letter pages. So if I like the comic and I consider myself a collector of the comic, I read the letters pages. I never used to read like Stan's soap ops. I did when I bought them. Christopher Crawley says Stan's soap box. I never used to read that as a kid, but now when I reread comics, I reread Stan's soapbox. I miss Stan. I know this is a weird thing to say, but Stan was my friend. I spent a lot of time reading his comics, reading interviews with him. I miss the guy. I miss my parents. I miss some of my friends that passed. So yeah, reading Stan's soapbox is like reading a letter from a friend. If that may sound maudlin or weird or creepy or whatever. Sorry, that's the way I am. So I read all that stuff. And when you CGC your comic books, you, you you're locking that stuff away. That's like lost history. You're never gonna read these letters again. You're never gonna read the ads again. You're never gonna see Stan soapbox again. So I'm against CGC in comic books. What do you want me to say? And this is a splash page, meaning it's the first page of the comic book, and it's one panel. It has to be one panel to be a splash page. So the splash page doesn't have to be the first, but most of the times it is. And look, this is George Perez, and RJ from the Fourth Age, who I reference a lot. Why? Because I like the guy and I like his channel. So check out the Fourth Age. It's a YouTube channel where a guy who's actually intelligent talks about comic books in an intelligent manner, not like a gushing fanboy who rambles and rambles and rambles. But RJ from the Fourth Age. Oh God, that went down the wrong pipe. Cool, you could watch a guy choke to death on live comic book. But anyway, now I lost track of what I was saying. Oh, RJ from the Fourth Age posted a quote from George Perez, and he says, back in the 70s, Marvel was going through an economic downturn, and they were laying people off left and right. So George said, I got to up my game. I got to get more talented. They're only going to keep the best. He goes, so I forced myself to get better out of necessity to keep working. And I love that. I love that. So, he as far as I know, George Perez's first Marvel artwork was like a Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. He did the Sons of the Tiger, and it's okay. Some of the people have big heads. They kind of look like human. They kind of look like adult infants in the way they drew. Still a million times better than I could draw. but he got better and better and better. And now here he is on Fantastic Four because he made himself get better. He saw the necessity. And that's something that Liefeld never needed. He never needed to get better. That guy came out. I don't know if the stars were right. I don't know if that guy was, was touched by Zeus, bing, or Apollo, bing. You got the gift. You're going to be famous. But he came out and he was a superstar. And I said it a few times before, and I like Rob Liefeld. I like the man Rob Liefeld. I've grew to like him because I kind of like the guys suffered the slings and arrows of like, and I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how successful you are. An entire fandom of people like making fun of you and attacking you and calling you. It's got to hurt. It's got to hurt. The guy's human, flesh and blood, and he suffered that, and he still came out with a good sense of humor. And he, he was just like, yeah, that you're right. That criticism is bad, but I like to think I do like that. The guy's walked a long mile. Yeah, having millions and millions of dollars and a supermodel wife and and a mansion. It's easier to suffer all that stuff, but it's still, I imagine, it hurts. It hasn't happened to me, but I'm an adult. I can imagine other people going through that, and it must hurt. So I like that he walked that gauntlet, and he still has a good sense of humor. I admire that. So I like the guy. Still don't like his art. Even his modern art I don't like. But he made so much money, he didn't need to improve. Like Frank Miller, there's a famous story about Frank Miller. He went down to Manhattan with all of his samples, and he went down to Marvel and DC, and he's like, oh, that's pretty good. Come back when you get good. And he went, okay. And he went back and he worked and he worked and he worked. He came back a few months later, like, oh, they didn't even remember him. They kind of just gave him the old 23 scooter out the door. Like, come back when you get good. Repeat this process, repeat this process, repeat this process. Frank wanted to be in comic books. He wasn't good enough for comic books. He kept working on it. And supposedly at the DC offices, he met Neil Adams. And Neil Adams liked what he saw. He saw potential in Frank Miller, and he took him under his wing. And Frank Miller kind of apprenticed under Neil Adams. Neil Adams gave him tips, gave him criticism, told him what to do, helped him out. And next thing you know, we all know Frank Miller. This is a guy. Can you imagine if Frank Miller, first day out? Because this is going to be mean, but this is what I feel, and I may be wrong. But I feel Marvel was going through a really tough period at the time, and they just hired people because they needed people, like art-wise, and Rob Liefeld just stepped in at the right time. I think if George Perez was working and John Byrne was still working, and because at this point they were all doing like Dark Horse and independent stuff. If those guys were still Marvel, I don't think we'd ever hear of Rob Liefeld. Feel free to correct me. This is just me talking, out of my butt right now. But that's what I feel. And I'm also, looking 30 years into the past. So maybe my timing is off. But that's what I think happened. So could you imagine if Frank Miller, he never would have gotten any better. He would have been a guy who did 6 months worth of comic books, got hired by, somebody else would have got hired on his guy. He would have been gone. But what happens is he refined it, and he became a legend. So there you go. And so look at this George Perez. He's definitely copying Jack Kirby. Definitely, and that's not a bad thing. Purple. Oh, okay, I thought that was purple pants, but look at this. So now we're gonna start turning pages. Look at the background. We're in Reed's lab. Why is the background red? Because it's red. Old school coloring. It doesn't matter. The background doesn't matter, so it's just red. So it's not black and white. Look, he's doing science, ladies and gentlemen, and now he's just harkening back. Looking at all the old stuff. The classic look for Sue. She, and it's funny. You could see some of the limitations on George Perez's artwork at this point. Like here comes Sue. I thought that was Johnny Storm. That doesn't particularly look too feminine. Maybe if yeah, okay, you could see the boob shadow in the long, but the rest of it doesn't look too feminine. I thought that was Johnny Storm walking in. I just saw blonde hair and a tiny figure, so you could see some of the limitations of George back then. George Perez just passed on. Nice guy. I met him at a comic convention, I think twice. And here, that they're just looking at everything, and the MacGuffin device. There's evil over here. You know, they're monitoring this, they're monitoring that. Just reached over for a napkin because I spilled some coffee on myself. Uh, I just, corridors. Look at the panel floors, John. I just love all this stuff. And the Ben is over here. Look at that face. Oh my God, that is awesome. Wouldn't you like a print of that? I got to figure out how to. I Anybody good with Photoshop? I would love to just take this panel, get rid of the words, kind of just fill it in, and make like a framed print and hang that in my comic book room. That is awesome. That is awesome. Look at the shading. Yeah, the shading on the thing. This is awesome. This is great stuff. How could they do this in a movie? As far as I know, they haven't really done the thing good in. They haven't done the Fantastic Four good in a movie yet. I'm real nervous how they're going to do the thing because Marvel, their CGI has gotten really bad. Their CGI has gotten really bad. So the things talk about what are we going to do about Stretcho? Stretcho lost his powers, so Reed doesn't have stretching abilities right now. And as he's saying that, Reed's like, "What?" And what's he doing? He's wearing these extendo arms that he created in Fantastic Four. Was that I can't read that number 39 back in. And then this always made me laugh. As a kid, I'm like, what did he just like make Johnny naked? But you know, he's got a towel around his neck, so he, you know, there you go. So I'm still the Fantastic Four. I still got stretching. Speaking of stretching, you just grab this, stretch this out, get super muscular. And here they are. The team's in action. They're going off to do what they got to do as the Fantastic Four. Look at that. Just great. And I don't know, because I wasn't there, if George Perez is literally altering his style to look more like Kirby, or if it's the Joe Sinnott influence. But either way, I love it. I just love it. Here they are, going up. There's the pogo plane. Look at that cityscape. That is just such a Kirby. This is just. How could you not like comic books? And how can I know my audience is skewered, so this is just, you know, a flawed sample. But pick up a comic book today. It just doesn't compare. It's just pure imagination. Come with me, and we'll see a world of pure imagination. And then this, I was like, who is this freak? But remember, I got the comic book after this first, so I already knew who he was. And it was very rewarding to kind of get them out of order and then see the Impossible Man showing up for the first time. He shows up as a gangster. He just went to the movies. He's like, yeah, it was just a great movie, and blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, oh, and he sits down and he watches TV. And there he goes. The Impossible Man's just sitting down. And where are they flying over? You know, just over this desolate mountainscape. Because they're going to Salem, which is in Massachusetts. So I don't know what mountains are over here. And the lad that reads Johnny's, they had like this kit car, so he's just assembling like this hot rod car out of boxes that like they could break down and store with them. And there they are driving around. And the Fantastic Four are just, I haven't seen Ben dressed like that in a long time. And New Salem. Okay, so this might not be in Massachusetts. New Salem. I just remembered it. Salem. I love these T-shirts. I had this shirt. I remember being a little fat kid. This shirt that would shrink and my belly would be sticking out, but I wore it all the time. I would not be caught dead in a Howard the Duck shirt. I didn't like Howard the Duck until I was an adult. I actively avoided Howard the Duck because comic books were for superheroes, not for silly animals. I didn't have this T-shirt, but I had this poster. In my garage, we had like an attic in the garage. And you take a ladder and you go up there. You know, my older brothers would smoke cigarettes and stuff. But I would just go up there. We had the Fantastic Four poster. And I just loved going up there. And here we go. There's me. There's Nick. There's me. If you've seen my picture of Odin, put an eye patch on that. Nicholas Scratch. That's what my friend Bob calls me. You know, he's an old comic book veteran from this era too. And that's Nicholas Scratch. He's the mayor of New Salem. And there's Agatha Harkness, who I called Agatha Harkins for most of my life because whatever, it just sounded better. And it bothered me to say Harkness because I'm stupid. And here's Franklin over here. That's one thing George Perez when he drew babies, they just look like miniature adults. And oh my God, she's got power. So they're leaving. They went down because of whatever the trouble alert told them to go down there, and Nicholas Scratch put like a little suggestive spell on them, and they're leaving. And she's like, "No, they're not going to leave." Whoom! Fire. Okay, so something's going on. We got to stay. So the people of the town are like, "Okay, the jig is up." Little Kirby crackle, and boom! It's a whole evil town. I love that idea. I you know, such a comic book trope, a hidden town. So the only reason they were able to find this town is because Agatha Harkness, made it so that they could find this town. But it's magic spells. This town is cut off from the rest of the world by magic. So they had to pretend that it was a nice town, but it's just an evil town. Gothic architecture. Everybody's a witch, a 1970s movie witch, and he's the head warlock. He's the head of the town, and you also find out. Spoiler alert, that's Agatha Harkness' son. So I wonder if the new TV series, the Disney Plus series, will have Nicholas Scratch as the bad guy. That'll give that character a little bit of more depth, to fight the main villain, and then that's my son. And they look at this. I love that. She's just exploding the clothes off, flame on. It's clobbering time. It's clobbering time. I love that. I I never did it, but I always wanted to get into a bar fight. Like my friend smashes a pool stick, and another guy breaks a bar stool, and then I just stand up and yell, "It's clobbering time," and then we'll probably get beat up because my hip hurts, my back hurts, and the younger guys will beat the crap out of us. But I used to joke about that. And another thing I used to joke about is like, can you imagine you're just hanging out, and whatever, you're in Manhattan, you're at the hot dog stand, and all of a sudden you just see Galactus, like his ship just approach. So that's scary enough. And then also the guy next to you just goes flame on and bursts into flame. So you're just a guy like in Manhattan getting the newspaper, getting a hot dog, whatever, and the human being next to you that you didn't really pay attention to just explodes into fire and fires away. Oh my God, I would have to sit down with my hand over. You don't realize how terrifying it is to be on fire. Go stand really close to a campfire. You know what I mean? Granted, I always pictured that Johnny Storm doesn't really release smoke because he's not really burning. You know, you only see smoke, or at least I only remember seeing smoke when he's shooting the fire on other objects. But Johnny Storm, he's not burning. He's not burning to death. So I don't think that it would be a smokeless fire. But still, just fire. I like the cosmic energy or whatever his cells just release whatever it is, the necessary components for flame. So and he also provides thrust. Otherwise, he would be flying. Logs from the fire don't just shoot up in the sky. So it's more than just fire. So in order for him to fly, he's got to be producing thrust. So even if he's standing there, I picture like hot air would be shooting in every direction until he focuses that hot air to push up. Now, it would be terrifying to be near him. And as Reed Richards is my favorite in the Fantastic Four. I take that back. Ben's my favorite. There's a hardcore band from Queen, Sick of It All. Yeah, I see Sick of It All many times. They used Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, and they had. I didn't see. They had a song called what? It faded away before I got to read it. But yeah, I used to be a hardcore kid back when I was like 15, 16 years old. Me and my friend Jimmy and John, who I mentioned with his wife Debbie, the Rangers fan, we used to go to CBGBs all the time. And they formed a band called Sucker Punch, and they played at CBGBs once or twice, and I was friends with one of the guys from the Crumbsuckers. We used to go see Murphy's Law. I was all into that scene. I had my little skinhead and my leather jacket, my Doc Martens and stuff, and I would go down to CBGB's every Sunday, the hardcore matinee. That a song. It's clobbering time. Okay, I couldn't read the rest of it. It popped up, and by the time I started to read it, started. Yeah, they had a song called Clob. Matter of fact, over there you can see my turntable. Oh, you can't see because the Superman cape, but there's a whole box of all my 45s. That's got my Sick of It All 45s. Pardon me. If you care, I did, one of my earlier videos was I opened up a box of all my 45s, and I just went through talking about my 45s like I talk about comic books, and it got like 4 views. So, I only did about a fourth of my collection, and I never did another follow-up because it didn't look like anybody was interested. But you could see there's, you know, maybe a fourth, maybe a fifth of my 45 collection in one of my earlier videos. Maybe you'll see some sick of it all 45s. I forget what actually made it into the video. So I was saying Ben is my favorite. I love Ben Grimm. He's the Pinocchio. He's purple pants. I just realized there must have been like a sale on purple pants back in the 70s, but everybody was wearing purple pants. I remember suck. Really, really. You saw my friend's band? Oh my God! You are the first person whom I haven't met in real life to know that band. Wow, wow. All right, here's to you. I don't even think they have any. You know, they I don't even think they recorded anything. They practiced, they rehearsed, they did a couple of live shows, and then they kind of fell apart. Wow, cool. I gotta let them know. I assume you're from New York. I assume you're near me. You know, come on over for a game night. Play some games. From hardcore punk rock kid slam dancing and stage diving to an old man with a ruler doing Star Wars miniatures on a table. Went to CBGBs, then ABCs, then did you ever go to like, Sundance out here at Sundance, and what's the other one? The Ritz. Why can't I think of all the Max's Kansas City, the Mud Club. You know, I'm that old, but I ain't got time for that now. Now I'm thinking of this ain't no Mud Club or CBGBs. I always thought that was mean. That they started the Talking Heads, and then they don't got time for that now. That's like, forget your roots. That was mean. But anyway, now you take me down a whole nother rabbit hole of talking about punk rock and hardcore. You know, it's funny because last night I was saying my brother. You saw the Cro-Mags. I said I probably slam danced next to you. You're probably the guy that hit me in the head. I saw Motorhead at Sundance, and we were it was Motorhead and why can't I think of the other band? It was Motorhead and my friend Jimmy. We took his station wagon out. We driving out to go see Motorhead, and it was slam dance, running around the mosh pit and everything. And at the end of the night, we go to the car. He has no car keys. They must have fell out of his pocket. So we're like, oh damn. So we go in and we explain the situation, and they let us in, and we'll look, and we can't find the keys. Okay, yeah, probably. There you go. Now we're old comic book guys. All right. So that's funny. I wonder how many of those old hardcore kids were also, into comic books, because I didn't admit it back then. Oh no, I didn't admit it. I thought I was going to get teased. Who was it that just talked to? It was Chuck Dixon. Just talked about. Now I'm going off on so many tangents, but this was funny. Chuck Dixon told a story on Graham Nolan's live stream that when he was in high school, he was on the newspaper staff, and one of the girls said she wanted to interview. She wanted to do a series of interviews of other students about their hobbies, but nobody would talk to her. So Chuck goes, you can interview me. I talk about comic books," and this was the '70s, and she goes, you don't want people to know about that, because comic books were a nerdy thing, I think it would be okay if you had a comic book in a car, but to admit that you collected comic books, no, 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 no. What was it? Was it Maverick or Quincy where they had the super fan? It was like the socially awkward guy who would dress up as his favorite superheroes, and he would go to comic book conventions, and he ended up committing murders and whatever. So comic books were not cool. So anyway, so we went to go see Motorhead. Jimmy lost the car keys. So we didn't know what to do. So now it's like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. The show's over. And we're sitting outside. And Jimmy, this is before cell phones. So we get a payphone. We got a call. And his sister answers the phone. She's like, you got to come bring the spare key out. So she's got to drive, an hour or so to come and get us. Or to give us the spare key. So we're just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Nobody's there. The show's long over. And door opens. Lemmy comes out. Lemmy. And we're like, oh. So I'm like, oh. And I'm like, trying to, and Jimmy's just, he's like, my dad's gonna kill me. I can't believe my sister's gonna come out. My Jimmy's sister was worse than the dad. Jimmy's sister's gonna kill me. Oh man. So he's not starstruck like I am, and I'm like, so Lemmy's like, hey, what's up? It shows, oh, what are you doing here? And Jimmy's like, oh man, I lost my car keys. So he's talking to Lemmy, but he's all wallowing in his own misery, and I'm sitting there going like, duh, 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 duh. And Lemmy's like, oh man, you lost your car keys. Oh, so he goes here, and he reaches into his vest. So this is Lemmy. His chest is all exposed except for a sweaty leather vest. He reaches into his vest. He pulls out a cheese sandwich. He was here. I'm thinking he's going to give us money for a cab, or I don't know what. But he pulls out a cheese sandwich. He goes, here you go. Jimmy just takes it and starts eating Lemmy's sweaty cheese sandwich. Gross. I did not take a bite of Lemmy's. I was joking that he was going to get Lemmy's. He was going to get like those face warts that Lemmy has. I was like, you're gonna get Lemmy's all over you. And then, true enough, Jimmy's sister showed up and started screaming at us. Oh my God, she and that's my brush with Motorhead. So anyway, you guys got me. You guys got me monologuing. A couple of pages in, I'm talking for an hour. I was nervous because I didn't know what to talk about. I didn't know if anybody was going to show up. I got 5 views. Boom! Look at that. That's Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. This is when she was Miss Marvel. This costume was okay, but the next costume, designed by Dave Cockrum. I've said it a million times. Dave Cockrum is phenomenal. First off, he's a great comic book artist. Second off, he is probably the best, if not, he's one of, if not the best. Up there with Steve Ditko, up there with John Byrne as costume design. The classic black like swimsuit with lighting, but that is just amazing costume design. So let's look at the names. I always like to look at the names. See, this is the kind of stuff that'll be lost forever if you see GCU comic books. Nobody's gonna talk about the letters pages. We got subscription Conan over here. I never read Conan as a kid. I had a few. See, here's the original Captain Marvel. Well, this is the original Captain Marvel costume. But that is just a great design. That is such a good. I love that costume. Matter of fact, when I was a little kid making up my own superhero costumes, I don't know how many times I basically ripped off that design. That's one of my favorite costumes of all time. Simple and elegant. When you're doing superhero costumes, simple and elegant. That's one thing that Image needed to understand is simple and elegant. And and I know this is blasphemy, but I'm not a big Jim Lee fan. Jim Lee, with all those lines and everything, and like superfluous lines, there should be no superfluous lines in a superhero costume. Jim, that's like Jim Lee's like signatures, like superfluous lines. And I don't like it. I respect Jim Lee. I respect his art. I like his art, but to me, he's not like, I don't know. I know it's ridiculous to say, but it's not my favorite. That's all I'll say. That's the only way I could describe it. So here's Nicholas Scratch doing Kirby Crackle and lightning bolts and hitting the gargoyles. How cool is that? And there's Reed just going to punch the gargoyles. I love this. Ben just goes over and grabs these loose rocks and just throws them up in the air, scratch, and just blows them up. And then Johnny Storm. Remember, Agatha put the flame around because she wanted to keep the Fantastic Four in town. They didn't want them to leave, so this flame is still active because it's magical fire. So he flies into the magical fire, and the gargoyle stops, and then he just comes out, tag, shoots him, and then Sue in this era. It wasn't until John Byrne. I'll fully admit this. Sue was always a hostage. She was always like, she wasn't really fleshed out as a character, or at least what they did flesh out about her. They took the worst of like femininity, like the submissiveness, the whatever, and the bitchiness. I hate to say it, but yeah, she was kind of like unlikable. John Byrne made her likable, made her cool, and she beat the Hulk. She put a force field around the Hulk, like almost like skin tight, then expanded it so the air was very thin, and the Hulk didn't know it because it was invisible, and the Hulk passed out. That's great, awesome. I like all members of the Fantastic Four. Johnny Storm is actually my least favorite, but so here she is. It's just beating her, and she's panicking a little. So she expands the force field and crushes the gargoyle. So they each get their little moment in the sun to beat some butt. I always wanted this. This is one of my favorite spaceships of all time. So here's Reed just taking him out and flinging him about, so what's going on now? Nicholas Scratch is like, okay, enough of this. I got to up the game, and this I always felt bad, and this kind of scared me. I kind of talked about this, but I didn't finish my thoughts. But like this evil town, I just love that concept. Like a town without pity, a town you're not welcome. Um, if you've ever seen Rosemary's Baby, which came out, I forget exactly which one, Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby. I love that movie. It's one of the scariest movies in the world to me, and it's not because of Satan and everything, but what I this poor girl doesn't know that everybody's in on it. Everybody's in on it, and she's not. So there's a conspiracy going on. Like the jerk husband basically sells his wife Rosemary to a cult, and she's gonna raise the Antichrist. She's gonna give birth to the evil Satan baby. So he moves. They give her, oh, look, I got a promotion at work. We got a new apartment. So they move to Manhattan. They get this beautiful apartment. And the innkeeper is one of them. The doctor is one of them. All the other people in the building are one of them. The woman who run. So everyone. So she's just being what's that word? There's a word for that. What, like, you emotionally abused. She's being secluded. She's sequestered. There's a word, isolated. She's being isolated from the real world. Everybody's in it. Everybody's a handler, and every problem she goes to, they all communicate and they're giving the answer. It's just terrifying. And so finally, she ends up giving birth to the baby, and she has no choice to accept it because it's her baby, and it's just terrifying to me. That kind of stuff scares me. Psychological terror. That's why I like Lovecraft, because you don't never really see the monsters. It's always people's reactions to the monsters that kind of scares me. So like you start sometimes you wonder, are there really monsters? Is this person crazy? And that's that Rosemary's Baby. My wife watches. She's like, that's not scary. Slasher stuff scares her. I could watch slasher stuff and laugh at it, but psychological, like The Hitcher with Rutger Hauer, that movie scares me. But anyway, this scares me. They go into a town. They're not welcome. They're not wanted. The Fantastic Four are the other, and everybody's in on it. So now Nicholas Scratch is making a spell, and everybody they're forming like a magic thing, and they're all lending his power. And then poor Ben is just beating the crap out of himself, and he's not holding back. So Ben Grimm is getting beat up by his own strength, and this is the first appearance of Madam Web. This predates the account. So here, look at these drawings. I forget who drew this, but this is an advertisement. Twinkies. So Spider-Man's a good superhero because he's using Twinkies, and Twinkies are delicious, not fruit pies, which are disgusting and horrible. And he defeats Madam Web with Twinkies. Good for him, because Twinkies are delicious. So now things are going topsy-turvy on him because the whole town is in on it, and they're all focusing their power on Nicholas Scratch, who's through his staff is up in the magical game. And now the sand itself is attacking. Now the poor Ben is beating up Reed. Johnny's flying around like a crazy person, and Sue in the cocoon just hits Johnny, and now the Fantastic Four are defeated, and they're all trapped. And look at this, just this ray right to. So Ben is, he's a champ. He ain't giving up. So he's getting punched, and he's staggering. You can see like the motion lines. He's coming up to Nicholas, and he's like, "I'm gonna beat the crap out of Nicholas Scratch." And Nicholas Scratch just everybody in the town focuses right to his face, and that takes him out. He goes, and that's the reveal. We are witches. And the next issue is the Salem 7. That's drama. That's drama. That's comic books. That's how you do it. Look at this. Is this Don Martin by Mad Magazine? I've seen this ad a few times. I'm not a sports fan, so I didn't know who these people were. So my friend Paul had to inform me who they were. I said, look at that. Great comic book. And then I take it back. The next issue is 185. Yes. So the first Fantastic Four comic I got was 187. I forget. But the first Fantastic Four had I showcased it. It had the Molecule Man and Claw fighting. So I think it was because the next issue is the second part where they actually introduced the Salem 7. Great comic. This is such a fun era for comic books. I don't know if this stuff has been collected, but I recommend if get the Fantastic Four. You cannot go wrong from 150 to about 125. 225, excuse me. 150 to 225. firing on all cylinders. Then they started to fumble a little. Uh, I take it back. 150 to two 250. We'll call it two. Maybe right after John Byrne left. I forget what 260. I think he left. You can't go wrong. 100 issues of great comics, and before that, Fantastic Four 1 to 102, the classic Jack Kirby, Stan Lee. So that's another thing. RJ asked me favorite runs. The John Byrne Fantastic Four run, great. And then I would say the Avengers from 150 to 225, great. Fantastic Four from 1 to 103, great. Thor, the Jack Kirby from like 150 to like 200. Oh my God, such great comic books. You know, such great. Who's the? I think Len Wein was the actual editor in chief at this point. You know, right before the Jim Shooter years. Oh God, this is chef's kiss, chef's kiss. So there you go. I've been talking for 70 minutes. My throat is getting a little crazy. I want to go up. I'm sure my wife is awake by now. We'll go have some breakfast. What a great day. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Oh, 7 people. 7 people. Thank you. Thank you all for showing up. I wasn't going to do this, and I basically told people I wasn't because I was going to go to my niece's house. I didn't know if I was going to get back in time. My original plan was, hey, thank you, Abrax. My original plan was I was going to sleep over because it's a 2.5 hour drive. I wanted to stay and see all my nieces and nephews, or my great nieces and nephews. I don't get to see them all. So I was going to just sleep over and stay, but I ended up leaving around 10. They were all going to sleep, and I was like, yeah, nothing like sleeping in your own bed. So I drove home, and I came home, told my wife everything, and I was out cold within like 15 minutes of walking in the door. I was just, tired, and then I woke up around like 1 because I drank so much coffee on the drive home that I got like the jitters. I just had to lay in bed till I fell back asleep. Now I'm rambling. But anyway, so I wasn't going to do this, so I appreciate that so many people showed up. Thank you so much. Next week is Christmas. Hi, Lacey Lee. How you doing? Good to see you. Where are you from? I don't think I'm going to do it next week because it's Christmas. And then the following week it's New Year's Day. I got invited to a New Year's party, so I don't know. I'm not much of a drinker, but my friend, he only lives a couple blocks away. He's got a new house. He likes his wine, so I could imagine us having a nice New Year's party, having some wine, and we will be talking comic books. We will be talking role-playing games, and I am coalescing my notes to do my I promised that I would talk about my superhero role-playing game. I didn't create the game. It's Villains and Vigilantes, TSR by Fantasy Game. Vermont. Oh, okay. I'm thinking about retiring up in Vermont. That my wife and I, we're kind of a toss-up between Vermont and Alaska. I like the individuality. I like the freedom of Vermont or Alaska. She either way, we want to get like a nice Hallmark type mountain village. So, maybe we'll be neighbors in a couple of years. So I don't know. Maybe next New Year's I probably won't do Sunday comics for 2 weeks. Okay, and I'm sure everybody understands the holidays. And then I want to make this a regular thing. While my wife's get a coat, a big coat. Yeah, I know. I plan on having like fix up my basement and if I'm retired, never leave the house during the cold season. But if I'm planning on Alaska, then it's just understood that the cold's not going to bother me. I went to Iceland a couple of years ago in December. My wife treated me to a trip to Iceland, and we loved it. We loved it, and it was funny because if you're going to Iceland in December, you just got to be psychologically prepared for the cold. So just like Elsa, the cold didn't bother me much. And on that horrible note, I'll Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year's, everybody. Thank you so much for making this fun. I said this a few times that when I started this channel out of kind of loneliness. It was right after COVID. My original game group, they got a little bit weird during COVID. I don't know if I got weird or if we both got weird. So I said, I gotta get out of the 5 boroughs. So I'm moving snow. I know. I moved out of the 5 boroughs, just the lockdowns and nobody going outside and all the restaurants closing. It was just very depressing. So we moved out here, what I call the country. And it was like reclaiming my life. It was awesome, but at the cost of my my friend group in Queens. So I had to start all over again. And I said, I'm going to do a YouTube channel. I'm just going to talk about comic books, online until I meet people. So this was going to be a temporary thing. Well, I have 3 game groups. I have a Sunday game group, I have a Monday game group, and I have a Thursday game group. We talk about comic books, we play games. Rich on my Thursday group, he commented on the giant killer robots, and I got people coming over. I got a couple of friends actually moved out here after we moved out. But I'm not stopping this because this is so much fun. You guys make fun talking to me and emailing me and RJ from the Fourth Age. It's just so much fun. So thanks a lot. Happy holidays, Christmas, whatever you celebrate. It's all the same thing. It's all just a celebration of life. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I'll be back doing regular videos, but I probably won't be doing live for a week or two. And if I do, it'll just be a surprise. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.